that you would use, how you would engage the coaches. These workshops are about challenging the coaches to think a different way. So although when you're in front of live people, obviously you would be much more dynamic and, moving around the room, we get that. Right. But it really is helpful for you to just practice the words you would use. How would you use questioning? And Joe and Ruben and I are really good at pretending that we're a room full of coaches.
Okay.
So we really are. So if you want to ask us a question, if you want us to turn to a partner and share, if you want us to get to a group on the other side of the room, match up with 5 people, tell us what you would do in a workshop, and we'll do our best to try to play along.
Okay. I went to the last one at Target Field that I told you about, and he didn't move people around so much. And with coaches, I think that would be. I also went to one where I watched a presenter work with students, and that one was much more going to groups and doing those different things. With the coaches, it was not so much of that. And so I'm going at it from a coach's standpoint, being an old coach and the like. So,
well, I would encourage you to think oppositely about that, though, because coaches need to talk with coaches just as much as students do. They really won't get as much out of it if we just talk to them. It's not a class. It's not a lecture. That's the way
that was my impression at this one too, that he didn't maybe involve the coaches as much as I would have liked to.
Good.
But trying to look for reasons to do that would be, and I'm not being critical of him. He's probably better than I'll ever be. But at the same time, that's what you're there for. You're sitting there trying to figure that stuff out. So honestly, I tell veterans.
Sorry, this is Joe Teresi. Can I make a quick comment on that? Because it's a really, I think you're making a great point. And it's one that I ask coaches of in the workshop all the time. Is that one of my questions is sort of a repeated thing with coaches is, are you holding yourself accountable for what you're asking of your athletes? And in particular, how many times do we ask our athletes to do something out of their comfort zone? And yet how unwilling are we as trainers, myself as well, particularly myself, as trainers or coaches to, activities aren't my thing. I'm not really good at those. But we're asking our athletes all the time to say, hey, try it, man. See how it goes. Learn through experience. And I think as adults, we actually have a harder time with it.
Right. I know I would, because, as an old teacher for almost 40 years, every time they told me I couldn't lecture in American history, I'd balk at it a little bit because, my idea was, hey, I know this stuff. The kids don't. They got to hear it from me. So I understand that I have to work on that. Let's just put it that way.
And I can tell you, I don't remember much of American history because I was talked at for 4 years of high school.
Right.
Yeah. And then I went to see the musical Hamilton, and I learned everything I ever needed to know about the U.S. history.
There you go. No, it can be.
All right, Tom. Well, we're gonna start you off. I usually give you a guideline of about 20 minutes. If you do it in less, that's fine. If you need to go over by a little bit, that's fine too. But I'll let you know when 20 minutes is up, because that's usually a good time frame for the introduction to the workshop.
Okay. Now a couple questions.
Sure.
In the first 21 or whatever it is slides, we've got the coach talking about leaving a legacy. Can I just skip past that in the practice run? Where I'd play it in the presentation.
Oh, right. You don't have to show. Yeah, you don't have to show us the video. That's fine.
Okay. So
yeah, we've already seen the video, so you can just
many times.
I would play the video.
Herm Edwards stuff. So
that's perfectly fine. Okay, great. So whenever
you're ready, if any of the three of us couldn't recite it for you, so don't need to say
it. We could say it for you.
Okay, and without showing you, I don't need to show you those things then?
No, I have my slideshow up right here in the corner, so I'm going to just follow along with you as you're talking.
Okay. Okay, so as I come in, the first thing I would say is, before we get started, I need to take attendance. My old high school principal will be absolutely surprised, because he said at my retirement that he knew for sure one thing I wouldn't be doing in retirement was taking attendance, because I wasn't any good at it. So it's good that there's a slide. Please text your number and your last name and email to this, so the PCA can, for its records, keep track of how many people are at this workshop. And at the end of it, you'll get a chance to tell me how I did. So we do need to take attendance. Okay. Why would you care what I have to say? As you're doing that, I'm an old coach, an old teacher at it 40 years. You're spending a good time of part of your day today listen to me. Why would you want to listen to what I have to say about coaching? I've done it for 40 years. My ambition, the reason that I'm doing it is that I felt.
You touched something.
The reason that I'm even in front of you is that I just felt with 40 years of experience that maybe some of the things that I experienced over the years could be helpful to you. And I'm talking about the good and the bad, the mistakes, the things that I've done right.
Are you there? He just hit mute.
Hello, somebody else come in?
Yeah, no, I think you touched mute. Are you holding on to the phone? Like, can you just sit it down so you don't have to hold it?
Somebody else said, hello, this is somebody, and I don't know who it was. I guess I got maybe another phone call. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think you turned the camera off again, though.
I see you.
Oh, okay. We don't see you. See it like at the top of the screen, there's a little camera. Maybe you tapped that by accident.
Well, I shouldn't have, but you see me now?
No.
Oh, come on.
You can see us though?
I can see you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Nothing there yet?
No, that's okay. I mean, as long as you can see us.
I have a little button that says live now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's live. It's good. I don't know what happened. Something happened, but that's okay. We can hear you, and we can, as long as you can see us.
Okay, I can see you. Yep. So anyway, as I was saying, I've been at this a long time, and I just thought that I might have something to offer to young coaches, so that they could learn from my experience. I've also my coaching experience is in 5 sports. It's also with women and men. It's not confined to one sport or to one gender. I've had good teams. I've had poor teams. Parents loved me, and parents didn't like what I did at times. So hopefully, from my experiences, in the conversation that we get started, I can say something that you can take home that will be of benefit to you. Why did I choose to do this through PCA? Well, I happened to be at the Twin Cities Marathon, and the PCA had a table set up, and I was waiting for my wife and daughter to finish, so I went over to find out what PCA was all about. As we discussed the philosophy, I thought it fit well with what I was trying to do. Now everything's goofy. I'm seeing you sideways. I'm seeing you sideways. I'm seeing.
You're good. You're good.
Oh, we're okay?
Yeah. I just brought up the PowerPoint so that we can see it as you go, since we can't see you. Okay. So we're good.
Okay. So, what is PCA? I didn't know a thing about it until we were, I had this conversation, and I found out that it was an organization that had been around for 20 years that has talked to thousands of coaches and millions of youth, puts on live workshops. And I thought, now that'd be something that I would enjoy doing now that I'm an old retired coach. I love their philosophy. So I went through the training process so that I could bring that PCA message out to the group. So let's get started. In the name, Positive Coaching Alliance, we're obviously talking about positive coaching. What does that phrase mean to you? You guys out there as coaches, how many of you had a coach that you liked? How many of you had a coach that you didn't like? Mm-hmm. What does the phrase positive coaching mean? Kelly, I'll ask you first, being you raised your hand. I wouldn't cold call on you, but.
That's fine. To me, positive coaching is a coach that is really enjoying being there, really cares about the kids, and is supportive, really encouraging and supportive of the kids, and just not super critical. Just really.
Did any of you have a negative coach? How would you describe a negative coach?
I describe a negative coach as one who puts their own needs, desires ahead of the needs and desires of the athletes that they're working with.
Okay. The research says that negativity actually distracts from the task. I know that there are some coaches out here in the audience that are saying, yeah, but. What's your yeah, but when I say that negativity distracts from the task?
It works. It gets the athlete's attention when they need it, when they're messing around.
Can you give me examples of any coaches in history that would probably be thought of as negative that were yet extremely successful?
I've just watched, over the last month, I've watched 40, 50 NBA basketball games, and in every single one, I saw coaches yelling and screaming at players and officials. And they've made it to the highest level of coaching in their profession.
So that's a very strong yeah, but isn't it? I'm a Timberwolves fan. We made the playoffs last night for the first time in 14 years. And the coach that we have now never quits, yelling and screaming. And yet, like you say, he's made it to the top of the profession. I would say my response to the yeah, buts, and I would expect somebody to say Bob Knight. I would accept somebody to say Vince Lombardi, and others who have been extremely, Woody Hayes, who's been extremely successful, but are thought of as tough guys. And my response to that would be, yes, but they're coaching at a different level than PCA's mission. We're looking at youth sports. And even Bob Knight had to come up with a way to overcome his negativity, and that was usually through his assistants. Dan Dakich, his assistant that you hear about, you hear him on TV all the time, he'd have to pick up the pieces after Bob would be very negative with a kid. So someone had to be positive with that kid to make it work. So negativity, and I think part of that, being an old history teacher, my father was in World War II. Those guys looked at the military way of coaching. And so my parents in that generation accepted that when their kids were coached that way. I would say that that may have changed over time as well, so that negativity maybe doesn't have that same positive effect that that generation thought that it did. So PCA believes, their model is that we can produce athletes, we can produce a better athlete, we can produce better people if we follow their model. And I think if you give the model a chance, you're going to see that that's very true. I've done a lot of reading from other coaches. Dr. Steve Wilkinson, who unfortunately died of cancer, coach at Gustavus Adolphus, my alma mater, tremendously successful tennis coach. If you look at Division III tennis, also a tremendous player. He ran something called Tennis and Life Camps. Very closely emulates what the Positive Coaching Alliance model, in that all the way down to honoring the game. I think as you dig deeper into the PCA model, you're going to find that the concept of positive coaching will help you a whole lot more than the negative thing. In fact, if I were doing this speech, doing the whole presentation, I would ask at the end of the presentation, I would ask, and I think I thought of this sitting at Target Field, I would want the coaches to respond, okay, now that you've heard it all, how can this help you win? Because every coach sitting in that thing, on a Saturday wants to get something that's going to help him win. The rest of it isn't a nice piece, they're going to think to some degree, but how is it going to help you win? And I think that would be a very important question to ask at the end of my presentation. How about the kids? What do they want? When a kid goes out for, B squad basketball, what does he want from that experience? Any coaches want to give an answer to that? What do they want as an athlete? Maybe what did you want as an athlete when you went out for a sport? What do you want from the coach?
I didn't know if Joe's there. I was going to let Joe answer.
I only hear you, Kelly.
Yeah, I know from my kids.
My internet is a little spotty up here in Canada. If you
sorry.
avoid me a little bit, probably go better for you.
No problem. I think the kids just want to have fun. My daughter right now is so fired up about going to lacrosse practice, and she loves it. It's late at night and she gets dressed up. It's been cold and snowy, and she goes because she has fun. She wasn't that way about swim practice a couple months ago, because to her that wasn't fun. So I think, she's just fired up because she's enjoying it. A lot of her friends play, and they want fun. They want fun with their friends. I think that's the ultimate reason.
Do you think that there are coaches who would say it's not supposed to be about fun, maybe at the high school varsity level? In fact, I've heard criticisms of athletes by coaches who say these kids just think everything's got to be fun. What about the work part? What's your response?
My response as a coach is that I can get kids to work harder if they're enjoying it. If they're actually, I want my kids to work hard. They know that's an expectation I have. And if I do a warm up that's a game of freeze tag where they're working really hard and they're running around and they're warming up their legs, and then go into a more technical drill where they have to be really sharp and really skill based, I'll get more out of them than if I had them run, full field sprints for the first 10 minutes to warm up. So
absolutely.
I've seen.
Absolutely. The research tells us that kids want three things if they want to be part of, when they want to go to be part of a team. They want to feel connected to an organization, to other kids. They want to be confident enough to believe that they can get better at that activity. And they want to be part of an activity that they can be proud of. That research is the basis of the model for Positive Coaching Alliance, for double goal coaching. Listening to and I apologize, I don't remember her name, a psychologist that worked with Olympic athletes for both men and women for the United States, I had to make a switch as a coach from coaching men to coaching women in basketball. So I went to listen to this lady because that was the topic of her conversation, was what was the difference between teaching men and teaching women? And her biggest difference, is something I never forgot without taking a note, was that women have to feel connected to their team and teammates before they perform well. Men have to perform well to feel connected. Either way, they want to be connected. However they get there, both men and women want to be connected. And I think as coaches, we all understand that when we have teams that are connected, we call it the it factor. They get it. And I don't know how else to explain it, but as a coach, you can feel it and the kids know it. And I think all of us in this room can agree that that's very important. The belief that they can improve. I know as a coach, I would be asked my goals by the newspaper at the beginning of every year. What's the goal for your basketball team? And my answer was always the same. We want to be the best basketball team we can be at the end of the season. It was never win 20 games. It was never, win a conference title or win a subsection or whatever it was. It was that we wanted to always focus on improvement, both individually and as a team, so that we could play our best basketball come tournament time. And being proud of something that you can be proud of. I served as an athletic director in our small school for a couple of years. And that really became part of my focus. I wanted to get past the negative chirping at the officials. And I wanted opposing fans to come into our school and walk out, win or lose, and say, this is a good place to play because these guys honor the game. And so that part of the PCA model was very important to me. Remember with our double goal coaching that we are not downplaying winning. We believe, and I believe strongly from 40 years of experience, that the double coaching model will help you win more. I also believe a few other things that I believe it'll give you as a coach longevity. I see a lot of coaches that come and go rather quickly or get under fire rather quickly. They think it's just about winning. I think if they handle their teams and using the PCA model and emphasizing the positive, they will gain the support of the community. They will gain the support of their superiors, and they'll be around to help kids grow and enjoy the career, enjoy the longevity that many coaches are not experiencing in this day and age. I don't know, I have to be close to 20 minutes. Is that, I think that's, I would end it obviously if I did the whole thing with an evaluation and et cetera, but.
Yeah. So how would you still have a couple more minutes. You only have gone for 15 minutes. So you do have a little time.
Okay. What I would look at.
Finish up with the legacy piece, because I think that's an important part to bring these coaches to realize what they're leaving behind.
Yeah, I missed it. You know what I did? I quit using my own thing here.
That's okay. Can you see what I have up here? So the parts that you...
Right now I'm on the elite players and coaches agree tab, slide.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to miss this because I've just done a lot of reading on Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
And as Ruben said, he watches the NBA guys scream all the time. Brad Stevens is an NBA coach, and I'm sure he probably criticizes officials more than we would even like, but he generally has a very, very positive approach to coaching. I would say that positive approach in terms of winning, where I could give you an example from my own life, my own coaching, where I became more successful. When I started becoming much more positive with officials and not allowing my kids to comment on the officials, we got better. And the reason we got better was, if you read Mike Krzyzewski, Lou Holtz, they talk about always focusing on the next play. Win means what's important next. And if you're, as a coach, harping on that official, you're thinking about the last play, which makes your kids think about the last play. So it just absolutely does not correlate with what you're trying to accomplish. The whole concept of positive just continues to make things better. I wish I would have not missed that legacy piece. There's Herm Edwards. Well, to be honest, in a presentation, and I don't have it with me, but when I retired, I was given a book, an amazing book, where another teacher went to all these people that I'd associated with, and they wrote something about me, put in pictures, and produced it, and it's amazing. But so when I read this, when the book of your life is written, will it say that you made a difference? And I would say that most of those people thought that I did, and that was the most gratifying gift I think I've ever received. And so I would like to think that you out there sitting in the stands, you 25-year-old coaches, would like to think, how do I want to be thought of when this whole thing is done? They're going to forget how many games you won. They're going to forget. They're even going to forget if you made them work hard to some degree. But they're not going to forget you as a person. Just the other day, I got an invitation in the mail to go to a former player's wedding. Those types of things, when you're my age, looking back, become very important. They're the things that tell you, hey, maybe you did something right. So it's that legacy that is, think about that as you approach your craft. And I think the PCA model surely gives you the guidelines which will create that type of legacy that you would like.
All right. I love it.
I wish I wouldn't have missed that. I should have kept that in order. I got excited about things.
That's okay.
Great job, Tom.
Tom, I have a lot of great feedback to give you. I think that was great. Let me just preface this by saying, when I know this PowerPoint inside and out.
I kind of faded out there. Sorry.
What?
I can't tell. I was breaking up a little bit there. I didn't know if you had asked for me.
Oh, no, not yet. What I was going to say is I know this PowerPoint inside and out, and you hit every part that's in the PowerPoint, just not in the same order that we did. But one of the things that Joe and I try to work with trainers on is not being so connected to the PowerPoint that you have to click and then read the slide and click and then read the slide. So personally,
I didn't click.
No, that's what I mean. You didn't click at all, but you hit every major topic that's on the PowerPoint. I mean, as I said, you just didn't do it in the same order that we do, but you hit it all. So the challenge is that we use the PowerPoint for the people that are visual learners, which I know you understand about visual learners.
Right.
So if there's a way to take, I don't want you to be married to the PowerPoint, because I thought you did a beautiful job. You were just talking about what you knew, and you hit every part of the introduction. So I think being able to use the PowerPoint just as a visual behind you, and maybe I have some suggestions on maybe taking parts of what you talked about and just changing the order of them so it goes along with our slides for the people that are learners. But that was probably my biggest suggestion. Joe, I don't know what your time frame is. If you wanted to give Tom some feedback, if you have to go, that's fine. Or else
just a tiny bit. You know, obviously, I know you're going to put in some practice with the technology, and already Kelly told me how much you've, the gains you've made there, which I'm super proud of, and you should be too. The one thing, and it's really more of an overarching thing, but relates to what Kelly said. One thing I really stress with trainers and strive for in my own workshops, and sometimes I succeed and sometimes I succeed less. But it's really tricky. We are not an information delivery company. We are not an information delivery kind of goal. And by that, I mean, your ultimate goal for a workshop is to really inspire and affect behavior. And the one suggestion I would have for that, for most of our trainers who were coaches, like I was a coach. Were you primarily basketball, Tom?
I've been an assistant football coach for 40 years at the varsity level. I was a head basketball coach of at 3 different schools, 1 women's program, 2 men's programs. I even coached golf.
Fantastic. So I'm a boys. Nice. I'm a boys and girls basketball coach as well, or in my coaching career I was. And the way I would look at a workshop is, it's a minute and a half left and you're down 8. And what do you inspire in the people in front of you to help them succeed or give them the best chance of succeeding? And it's a real nuanced thing, because I know there's a lot of content, it's good content. And as much as I believe that and have helped, develop some of that content, I also have to remember that the goal is really that they're excited to go out and practice. They're excited because they've got some new tools and they've got some ideas that they can really put, on the court, on the field, whatever, and use. So that I like as a trainer to think of myself more as a coach than as a trainer. And I think one time, exactly. And I think the mistake I make more often than any other, and it's in so many work regards, is that I forget the things I do well as a coach. And I forget to employ them in my colleague relationships and in my workshops and in my, professional dealings. The reason you're on the call with us right now is because you're a great coach. So please make sure that you leverage that more than any other thing in being successful in workshops.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I have just some detail specific things, Tom, that it's funny, your name shows up as Cindy, so I keep thinking
right. We have the same, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
our
it's fine.
technology, Kelly, it's embarrassing.
It's you know what, it's totally fine. I've had some people's names show up as like cutie pie, so don't even worry about it.
Cindy's my wife.
You said you weren't going to tell people I did that, Kelly. Stop it.
I know. Sorry. There's a lot of details, Tom, that I really, really liked and that I'm excited about. I find myself sometimes when I do these demos, I'm supposed to be giving you feedback and evaluating and seeing how you're doing. And the other half of the time, I'm just writing down comments or things that you said that I want to use in my own workshops. So I think that's why I think, we all have our niche. We all have something that we're really good at. We all have our level of expertise. Some trainers were former professional players. Some trainers are former teachers. Some trainers are super high energy and dynamic. And I would probably put myself into that category. I never coached at, the Division I level. I have not been a coach for 40 years. I was an elementary teacher, but something I'm good at is getting the people in the workshop to talk with each other, move around the room, get in groups. That's my magic. That's what I can do. Joe's a great questioner. He's great at calling people out and challenging them. And he uses a lot of his, dramatics to get, the kids or the coaches engaged. You have 40 plus years of experience in 5 different sports, and you don't have to practice to share what you've learned. You don't have to memorize a script. You're just speaking from your heart. And so I felt that coming through, and I think that's one of your greatest assets. So with that, as you were going through, I just have a couple suggestions for you that I would probably maybe rearrange order or just add to or go. Sometimes you said something and I was like, oh, I want you to go further with that. I don't want you to switch topics yet because that was such a good topic. So I'll just go through and just give you some of my comments. This is recorded, so you don't have to write them all down. You can watch it back later.
Okay.
One of the things I would do right off the bat is tell us what sports that you did coach. I think it's nice for coaches to actually hear, if you say I was a coach for 40 plus years and you coached, squash, then none of the coaches are going to be able to relate. But if you say I was an assistant football coach for 40 years, I coach basketball, I coach men, I coach women, I coach a little bit of golf, that's a good way to connect, because part of it is we want you to connect to the coaches as well. So just tell us details about that. I think the what is PCA? Real quick before I forget, when you do the text to sign in slide, it's really important. This is where you're going to be teaching. This is where you put on your teacher hat. This is difficult, even though you might have young coaches that are really good with their iPhones or whatever. It is important that you do break this down slowly. And what you tell them on this slide is what's going to get them registered into the workshop. And it's the only way we have to connect to them moving forward. And it's also the way that they will get a certification card sent to them. It's going to be emailed to them that says that they've been certified as a double goal coach. And they'll be connected to a newsletter for the next 6 weeks that gives them resources right at their fingertips. So those are three things that are important. If you just put up the slide and say sign in, they're going to not know what it is. So, I usually slow it down and say, okay, everyone take out your phones. I want you to text to this number, 650-763-2405. Put that number in your phone. Okay, now, in the subject of the text, I need you to put the number sign, no space, and then each workshop has a number, so it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your first name, your last name, and then your email address, and then hit send. So I'm super clear about all this because I don't want anybody to do it wrong, and I want everybody to make sure they get credit for the workshop.
Right.
So I just want to put it to you just to spend a little more time on that. I really like the idea of the question that you asked about a negative coach that had a successful record, because I think that is a question that the yes, but, a lot of these coaches are going to have in their heads, like, okay, positivity is great, but I want to win.
Right.
So I really, really like the way you addressed that. And I thought you responded to it very well by talking about, Bobby Knight surrounded himself with positive assistant coaches. And you even said that was crucial. Even Bobby Knight, the way that he was, knew enough to know that he needed positivity in his program. So
can I actually add a quick thing there, Kelly?
Sure.
Just as a side note, I apologize for interrupting you.
Sure.
Carefully, I say this, Tom, because it's not a pat rule, but I really encourage people not to mention Bobby Knight, but I actually liked the way you did it, which is rare for me, because you did focus on, the one thing I would avoid is characterizing him as a bad coach, because there's too much there. But say, hey, Bobby Knight, we all think what we think, but one thing I know he did was really surrounded himself with really positive assistants. I liked the way you did that a lot, but I would double that comment for Vince Lombardi. I'm really careful about pointing out very specific examples that they're not a specific instance of, like, a coach is this. Now, if you want to talk about, the guy at I'm going to lose it now, Mike, whatever, who was throwing basketballs and kids. I was talking about the incident rather than this coach's bad.
Oh, at New Jersey.
I'm just careful about that.
At Rutgers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rutgers. Thank you very much. Anyway, sorry to budge, Kelly.
No, that's a really good point, and I agree. I like the way Tom used that by saying, even the coach had to surround himself with positivity. But you also added that they're professionals, and they're at a higher level, and this is not the youth level. So I like the way you did that a lot. I put a couple stars around there. And I also like the way you brought in the military style of coaching, because that is true. And you made it personal. Your father was in World War II, and this military style of coaching was how coaches thought that's what they had to do. It's all they knew. And that's what they did. And that's right around the same time when organized sports started at the youth level. There were no Little League baseball teams until after that. So, I love that. I thought that was great facts to put in there. It's
also a point that Phil Jackson makes on one of our videos with him, that we're born in a military model of coaching. So I actually use that. If you look at the double goal coach slide, you'll note that the title is Our Model, and talking about a coaching model, I think is helpful to understand. And that's the shift that Phil Jackson describes. We had a military model, and we had I just want to warn you one thing, because I got pulled aside after a workshop by an actual drill sergeant. in the military who pointed out to me, which I had no idea, that they're actually employing a lot of positive psychology, and that the military model we see in movies is really not accurate to what's going on today.
Yeah.
So just be careful with over characterizing something that you're not involved with, because I know I got bit by it.
Well,
yeah.
and you can say thank you to that. I can use that in my future presentations.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's
a great point. Yeah, we have a trainer. We had a trainer out in Colorado who was in the military, and he used that as part of his introduction. That, when you think military, you think very negative and very critical. And he said that the whole shift. He was a sergeant in the military, and he said, we are shifting because we're not as you said, the longevity. You're not getting the longevity. You're not getting the results that you want. And he said, even with the military and police canine unit, he said they've even now, not that people are like dogs, but I think it was a good point to bring that even with the training of the military and canine dogs, they've shifted completely to a positive only method. And canine dogs and military dogs are now having a work career that's twice as long as it used to be. So, I mean, I just thought that was a quick example. So Tom, that's what I liked. I like the way that here's another part that I thought you should change the order of. What you said was, I would ask coaches at the end of this workshop how all of this stuff can help you win. And I think that's a great question for the end of the workshop, but I also think that's a great question for the beginning of the workshop to have them think about. Okay, we all know that we all want to win. That's why we're here. Teaching the life lessons is more important. That's the double goal coaching model. But as I go through this entire workshop and teach you a lot of these new tools, and we talk about it and challenge yourself, I want you to think in the back of your mind, how will this help you win? So that can be a thread that goes throughout the whole workshop. Does that make sense?
Right. And I actually thought of that as I was preparing this. And so I ended up putting it in the middle before I got into the 3 principles.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really wouldn't have it probably at the end. I would want them to answer the question at the end, but I would pose it at least before we start into the 3 principles, the elm tree and the et cetera. So, or at the beginning, either one would be absolutely, I think it has to happen. I talked to a friend of mine who actually participated as a coach, listening to a speaker up at his high school. And his response was, well, we're not going to win all that much anyway, so I guess the positivity is good. And I said, whoa, wait a minute here, buddy. That's not the message. So I think that you have to deal with that in coaches' minds. I mean, coaches, we do what we do because we're competitive. And, hopefully we do good things along the line, but we can't say we're not competitive.
Right. Well, that's the other question too. You said that, coaches like Bobby Knight, Vince Lombardi, they are coaching at a different level. So it's almost okay for them to be negative. But if you look at the slide that says elite players and coaches, we've got Bruce Bochy and Brad Stevens and Steve Kerr. I mean, Steve Kerr, one of the most successful basketball coaches in modern times. He believes positivity is the answer, and his job is on the line, and he is getting paid for it. So, I think that's it just gets people to start thinking, like, these are youth coaches that are volunteer. They're not getting paid. They're out there. That's nice. They're out there.
What's all that?
I don't know. They're out there, a couple days a week. Their job's not on the line, and they're, we've got people whose careers are on the line, and they believe positivity is the way. So I'm gonna keep moving on. I love the women versus men, and I also would. Is that you, Joe?
It's not me.
Yeah, I hear Joe like moving around. I'm gonna just mute him for a second. Okay. The women and men, I love that quote. About women need to be connected to perform, men need to perform to be connected. I've also heard women need to be accepted to perform, men need to be accepted to connected. Again, I would just make sure that, this is a general statement. Obviously, there's female athletes that like to perform, and there's male athletes that need connection. So I think, we just have to be careful about leaving, strong statements like that. But I think it's good to bring up the differences that you saw in coaching females versus males, because that comes up at workshops a lot also. And that's not really a part of our workshop. So I think that was great.
No, I was just trying to emphasize that it's important to be connected. Whether there's differences or not, the connectedness is the important part.
Sure. I thought it was great. The it factor, I think that was a great thing to put in there, because there is sometimes that it factor and you're trying to figure out what that is. What is that it factor? The question that you had, this I thought I liked, and this is where I want you to go further. You said, you know, when I'm a coach and I'm talking to a newspaper at the beginning of the season and they say, what's your goal? You said your goal was to be the best basketball team they can be by the end of the season. I would take that and I would ask every coach in the room to write down what they are, either turn to a partner or write it down in the front of their book. What would you say your goal is? So even before you share yours, I would say, listen, you know, I've been a coach for 40 plus years. I constantly have the newspapers coming at me asking me, hey, coach, what's your goal for the season? I would have them write down as an exercise, write down what you would tell the newspaper guy. Because again, that's engaging them. It's getting them to think. And then have a couple people around the room share. What did you write down? What's your goal for the season? What's your goal for the year? And then you can share yours and your reasoning why. You can say, this is what I usually said. I want my team to be the best basketball team they can be by the end of the season. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about how many, you know, wins versus losses or how high we're going to get in the tournament or what our standings are going to be. If you have the coaches do it first and then you follow up with your answer and your reasons, it's going to be a lot more engaging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great.
Okay,
that's a good comment.
So that's a good exercise when I'm talking about like teaching at them versus getting them to start thinking. That's a great example. You could tell them what you told the newspaper. You could tell them all the answers, but it's better to bring it out of them first so that they can discover. So that I would just suggest that. I like the way that you were talking about when you talk about legacy. Longevity. What a great, I didn't even think about that. That's so true that we want coaches to stay in this. And, you know, somebody like me that hasn't coached for 40 years, I never even thought about the fact that the reason that we're losing so many coaches is because of negativity. So I thought that was fantastic, the way you brought that up. The Brad Stevens talking about that, I thought that was great as well. When you're talking about the legacy you leave behind and that you've gotten invitations to former players' weddings, that's something that coaches are going to remember. And again, I would have the coaches either write it down or share it with somebody next to them. A lot of coaches might not want to share it with the whole big group, but share it with somebody next to them. What do you want your legacy to be? You are retired now, Tom. They're not. So you can say to them, hey, you know what? I'm in my retirement now. And I look back and I think, gosh, what did I leave behind for these players that I coached over the last 40 years? When you're in my shoes, like this is you speaking, when you're in my shoes, what do you want those athletes to say about you? Because, I mean, most of your athletes right now are adults and they're out in the real world. And there's something that you taught them that they're taking into the world. What do you want your legacy to be? That's a really when Joe talks about changing behavior, that's a really powerful statement that coaches remember doing. And then asking them if they say, you know, whatever they share their legacy to be, ask them if they're coaching to fulfill that legacy. You know, coaches say, I want my players to work hard, become better people. I want them to learn teamwork. I just want them to, you know, I want them to know I care about them as people. Yet at practice tomorrow, are you screaming down their throats about them not being able to take a foul shot? You know, are your actions following what you really, truly want your legacy to be? So I just think, again, that's another way to pull in an activity or an exercise rather than just telling them.
Yeah.
The last thing that I think I love the way you were talking about Coach K and Lou Holtz going on to the next play. I would save that till you get to the Elm Tree of Mastery, because the mastery portion of the workshop is where we talk about the mistake ritual and moving on to the next play. So I would hold off on that story because that's a great example to use when you get down to that Elm Tree of Mastery principle. Rather than putting it in the introduction, I would save it.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would save too is when you talked about as soon as you started respecting officials, you know, that was the same idea. You were talking about respecting officials, you know, why that was why that was messing up, you know, your team performed better when you started respecting officials because you were moving on to the next play. That, you know, talk about the next play during the Elm Tree of Mastery. And then when you get to honoring the game and you talk about officials, you can bring that up again. Yeah. And you know what? Honoring the officials is, people say, oh, it's good to honor the officials. It's good to teach respect. It actually made my team perform better because they weren't harping on the last play. They were thinking about the next play. So as I said, I think you have a lot of awesome raw materials for a great introduction to the workshop. I would just reorder them a little bit, get the coaches to think more about their own experience, their own legacy, what their goals are. And then the rest of the workshop, you're going to give them lots of tools on how to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next demo that you would do would be one of the principles. So you can choose, if you want to go in order, you can choose the emotional tank, fill in the emotional tank next. You can go to Elm Tree of Mastery. I usually like for one of the demos to be the honoring the game piece so that you can see how you close out the workshop. If you want to do them all, I offer people 3 different times to do demos. I've had people say, hey, can I do 4? And I say, absolutely. So you can do every section of the workshop if you want to. But the more you do it, the more you're comfortable with the material, the more you can see how your flow and your stories can match sort of the order of the workshop that we have. But again, I really like the way you're married to the slides, Tom. I think it was strong.
Well, thank you. So now I just prepare and then I get hold of you and say, when can we do this?
Yeah, absolutely. And what they've been able to do in Minnesota, which is great, is the last one that you do, they actually let you do it in the office live. And they'll bring a little group of PCA staff members and some trainers together. And you'll be able to do it live for them in the office instead of a Google Hangout so that we can actually see it with live people, which is better.
So basically a minimum of 2 left, you're saying?
Minimum, yeah.
Minimum of 2, okay.
Yep. But if you'd like to do more, I'd be happy to practice any more with you that you want.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. For this demo, now I've never done this, but I know I could get help to do it. There's a clip from a Jim Valvano speech that I wouldn't mind using.
Yeah.
Can I put that into the PCA slideshow or do I not mess with that?
You can. So Joe Tarasi, that was just on the call, I can give you his information. He is actually the technological genius for the whole PCA trainer department, but he also is the Minnesota lead trainer. So if you ever have a video that you want to put into your workshops, I would ask that you just send it to Joe. So if it's, I don't know if it's on YouTube. Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, this is.
Yeah. So all you have to do is send Joe the link. So when you pull up the YouTube link, you can just copy the link at the top, and I can show you how to do that, and send it to Joe, or send the name of it to Joe, and he could probably find it, just to get approval. And then he can also put it into the presentation for you.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
that's good to know. Yeah. Very good.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate you taking the time. Just let me know when you're ready to go on to the next part.
Will do. We got 12 inches of snow coming Saturday, so I'll have plenty of time to be inside.
Really? You have 12 inches of snow coming. See, we have 75 degrees coming on Saturday.
Yeah, if I went to Iowa, it's pretty warm today. It's not bad here today, but the warm's going to hit the cold on Saturday. It's going to be a mess here. So our spring sports are all messed up.
What town do you live in?
I live just west of the Twin Cities. I'm about 30 miles west of Twin Cities. Waconia is a town of 10,000 people. Just 30 miles from Target Field.
Okay, we have very good family friends that are in Brooklyn Park. So I was out there. I was out there about a year ago to stay with them for a little while. But yeah, I mean, we've had a horrific winter here too. It's been snowing. Our fields have been covered in snow, and this is the first weekend all winter that it's gotten above 60 degrees, and it's going to be 77 on Saturday here. It's crazy.
Well, enjoy.
I'm going to.
Enjoy.
I'm excited. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.